Okay, so we are on the consumer theory, how us as consumers make decisions whenever we are buying goods or services. Okay, three main factors that um, determine what we buy, whatever we buy, are our income level, basically our budget, our preferences, and the prices of the goods and the services. All right. So in this topic, there's a term called utility. Utility measures satisfaction. So in economics, whenever you hear the word utility, just know we're talking about satisfaction. Okay. And as a consumer, you want to maximize your satisfaction. Okay. That's what everybody wants. Whenever you buy goods and services, you want to maximize your satisfaction. Okay. So the first concept we're going to do in this topic is the budget constraint. Colleagues, what do we understand by the word constraint? Let's get our yes, limitation, yes. And we experience this every day, colleagues. Okay, every time we go into a grocery shop, all right, you have a limit. Your budget will have a limit, and you can't go beyond that limit. Okay, so with this topic, the way the budget constraint equation is you have your limit of income. Let me just write the equation first. Okay, this is how the budget constraint equation is. All right, y, this is your income. Okay, with your income, the scenario is you can only buy two goods. Okay, so here px is the price of good x, x here is the quantity of good x. All right, px price of good x, x quantity of good x. Py, the price of good y. Y, this big Y, is the quantity of good Y. Okay? And what we have is our budget constraint equation. Graphically, this can be shown like this. Okay, on our y-axis, we have good Y. On our x-axis, we have good x. Right? So we have a straight line like this. All right? This is how our budget constraint equation is shown graphically. Okay, so now there'll be some certain terms that we must get familiar with. Okay, so that we understand this topic more. All right, using this graph. All right, if we look at this graph here, okay, where this line cuts the x-axis, this is our x-intercept. What this x-intercept represents is that with your budget, you're only buying good X. You don't buy good Y, just good X, all right? With your budget, you're only buying good X. That's what the x-intercept represents. Okay, and how you find your x-intercept is this formula: y, which is your income, over the price of good x. Okay, the x-intercept just represents when you're buying only good x. We also have our y-intercept here. Here, you're only buying good y. Okay, you are only buying good y. Right, so yeah, that's our y-intercept. How we find our y-intercept? Well, we're only buying good y. This is the formula here. Okay, I will illustrate this with a practical example. Just hold on. Let me just tell this person I'm in class. Hello. Yes, I'm in a class. Let me just call you back. Then we have our slope of the budget equation, negative px over py. Okay. And I'll show you how we're going to interpret our slope. The slope is just showing how many units of good x you need to give up to get good y, basically. All right. Yes. So let's say, for example, you have an income of 1,000. Okay. Let's say there are two goods you can buy. Okay, let's say good X. The price of good X is 2 kwacha, and the price of good Y is 1 kwacha. Okay, so basically, what our intercepts are going to tell us is, with this income of 1,000 kwacha, our X intercept will tell us how many units of good X we can buy. Okay, if we just buy good X. Then our Y intercept is going to show us how many units of good Y we can buy with our 1,000 kwacha. Okay, then our slope would tell us how many units of good X do we need to give up to get 1 unit of good Y. Okay, so first let's find our x-intercept. Basically, if we're only buying good X, right? So we're just going to do Y over px. Our income is 1,000. The price of good X is 2 kwacha. 1,000 divided by 2, that is 500 units. Okay, so with our budget of 1,000 kwacha, if we only buy good X, we can buy 500 units. Another way you can also find this, or I forgot to even make the budget constraint equation. Let me make the equation, the budget constraint equation with this information. So our income is 1,000. The price of good X is 2 kwacha. We do not know the quantity yet. So we put 2x there, plus the price of good Y is 1 kwacha when we given any quantity of good Y. All right. This is our budget constraint equation. Okay. From this information here, we formed this budget constraint equation. All right. And we said if we're only buying good X, we can only buy 500 units. Now, I also wanted to illustrate another way you can find the x-intercept, right? If in case you forget this y over px. The other way you can find how many of good x you can buy if you just only buy it is you equate y to 0. Okay, because when you're buying good x, you're not buying any of good y, right? So if you equate y to 0, our budget constraint equation becomes 1000 equals 2x. This y is 0. 0 times 1, that is 0. So to get the value of x equals 500 units. Okay, that's one way. That's the other way you can find your x-intercept. Basically, how many of good x you can buy if you're just only buying good x. Now, before I go any further, any questions before we interpret our slope and our y-intercept? Okay, if we want to only buy good y, okay, it's just y over py. Okay, y is 1000 kwacha. Price of good y is 1 kwacha. So if you buy only good y, you can only buy 1000 units. Okay, if you're only buying good y, you can only purchase 1000 units. Okay, the other way you can find, so this is our y-intercept here. The other way you can find your y-intercept, since you're only buying good y, so it means you're buying 0 units of good x. Okay, so you just equate x to 0 in the budget constraint equation, and that's how you get your y-intercept. Now let us interpret the slope. Okay, the slope is negative px over py. Okay, this negative just represents this downward slope. Okay, as you can see, the line is a downward sloping line. The price of good x is 2 kwacha. The price of good y is 1 kwacha. Okay, so 2 divided by 1 is 2. So what this 2 represents, it is telling us to get 1 unit of good y, get 1 unit of good y, you need to give up 2 units of good x. Okay, The way you can think of it, the numerator represents what you give up. The denominator represents what you gain. Okay. Yes. Any questions, colleagues? Okay. So let us just, there's a question that we can look at, and then we can go through these principles that we have learned here. Okay, so we can look at this question here. It says, explain the term total utility. Just this is the total satisfaction you get when you consume a good. Okay, total utility is the total satisfaction that you get whenever you consume a good. Now here's a question on the budget constraint equation. Right? A consumer has an income of 60 kwacha, which can be spent only on goods X and Y. The price of good X is 3 kwacha and the price of good Y is 2 kwacha. Graph the consumer's budget constraint, clearly labeling the intercepts and the slope of the budget line. Okay, so from this information, we can first thing we need to do is form the budget constraint equation. Okay. Our income is 60 kwacha. Let me just write first. Okay. I'll put a prime here to distinguish this. These y's are different. They are not the same. Okay. This y is the income. This other y is the quantity of good y. Okay. So our income in this case is 60 kwacha. The price of good X is 3 kwacha. So Px, replace it with 3, it becomes 3x plus the price of good Y is 2 kwacha. So this is our budget constraint equation. Okay. Any questions before I move further? Okay. So they've told us graph the consumer's budget constraint, clearly labeling the intercepts and the slope of the budget line. Okay, so we can get our intercepts. Once we get our intercepts, we can make this, we can graph this. Okay, this is the fastest way of doing it, right? Okay, so we need to get our x-intercept basically when we only buy good x. Okay, remember our x-intercept, the way we get it, it is our income divided by the price of good x. So our income is 60 kwacha, the price of good x is 2 kwacha, so we can buy 30 units of good x. Okay, so here at point x, we can buy 30 units of good x and 0 units of good y. Okay, because remember, we're spending all our money on good x. So this is our x-intercept t. Then our y-intercept, where we're only buying good y, so our income over the price of good y, which equals 60 divided by 2 kwacha. Oh, price of good x is 3 kwacha, so 60 divided by 3, that's 20 units. So if we only buy good x, we can buy 20 units. Then if we only buy good y, we can buy 30 units. Okay, so our y-intercept, we're buying 0 units of good x and 30 units of good y. All right, and then you just connect the dots. Okay, so this is how you draw your budget constraint equation. Okay, and they also told us we have to put in the slope. Okay, so the slope here, px over py. The price of good x is 3 kwacha. The price of good y is 2 kwacha. Okay, so basically, to get 2 units of good y, you need to give up 3 units of good x. Okay, to get 2 units of good y, you need to give up 3 units of good x. What about if you want to get 1 unit of good y? How many units of good x do you need to give up? You just say 3 divided by 2, 1.5. So this is to get 1 unit of good y. You give up 3 units of good x. Okay, colleagues, that's what the slope is telling us. Any questions before I move to the next part? Okay. Suppose the consumer chooses to purchase 12 units of good X. On the same graph, show the consumer's utility maximizing bundle. Okay, whenever you hear the word bundle, it's just a combination of goods. Okay, colleagues? Not bundles for talk time. Okay, this is a combination for good X and Y. Okay, so the utility maximizing bundle is the combination of good X and good Y that will make us the most happy. Okay, so then the other part of the question, we have to also show the indifference curve through this point. An indifference curve, okay, it shows the combination of good X and good Y that you can get while maintaining the same satisfaction. Okay. The word indifference means not really affected, okay, where you're not affected, or you don't care, you know. So on an indifference curve, as I will illustrate, what is just showing different combinations of good X and good Y that you can obtain while you maintain the same level of satisfaction. Okay, because each indifference curve has a different level of satisfaction. Okay. So oh, so they told us if this person purchases 12 units of good X, we need to find out how many units of good Y can they get. So here, our equation, we write our budget constraint equation here. 60 equals 3x plus 2y. Been told the consumer gets 12 units of good X. Three times 2, 12, that is 36. We need to isolate y. So this 36 crosses over. 60 minus 36. What do we get when we subtract 60 minus 36? Let me just turn on the appliances. Power has just come. Yes, 60 minus 36. 24 divided by 2. So we can get also 12 units of good Y. Okay. If we get 12 units of good X, we can get 12 units of good Y. Okay. Any questions before I show the indifference curve? just erase this part. So this is how an indifference curve looks like. That's a Let me try to do it better like this. Yes. This is how an indifference curve looks like. Okay. So the utility maximizing band, which is the combination of good X and good Y, that is going to give you the most satisfaction, occurs where the indifference curve is tangent to the budget line. Okay. When we say tangent in mathematics, it means they have the same slope. Okay, where the indifference curve and the budget line touch each other, basically at that point, that's where they have the same slope. That is the utility maximizing band. That is the combination of good X and good Y to give you the most satisfaction. So in this case, if you have 12 units, if you buy 12 units of good Y and 12 units of good X, you are going to get the maximum satisfaction. And this point again here can be mathematically shown like this, because as I said, when they are tangent, it means the slopes are equal. So the slope of good X and the slope of good Y, the slope of the budget line and the slope of the indifference curve should be equal. All right. What this mu represents is the marginal utility of good X. When we say marginal utility, we're just talking about the additional satisfaction you get whenever you consume good X. That is the marginal utility. When we say marginal utility of X. MUY is the marginal utility of good Y. The additional satisfaction you get when you consume an extra unit of good Y. So this slope of the indifference curve is also called the marginal rate of substitution. How many units of good X you need to give up in order to get good Y. The way we interpreted this slope here for the budget line, for the indifference curve, you call that the marginal rate of substitution. How many units of good X you need to give up? Remember, the numerator is give up to get good Y. The denominator to get is to get. Okay. So that's the marginal rate of substitution, which is the slope of the indifference curve. Okay. Yes. And let me also just illustrate how you interpret these points on the utility curve. Okay. On the indifference curve. Okay, you have point A, point B. Okay. So let's say at point A, maybe let's say here this is 15. This is 10. Okay, so at point A, you're just The way we interpret coordinates on the graphs is just the same how we interpret here. At point A, you are consuming 15 units of good Y and 10 units of good X. Right? At point B, ten units of good Y and here let's say this can be 19 units of good X, right? So these points A and B, okay, you don't care which combination, okay, you are indifferent about the combination, okay. If you want 15 units of good Y and 10 units of good X, you're okay with that. If you want 10 units of good Y and 19 units of good X, you're okay with that, okay. They are all going to give you the level of satisfaction, okay. The only thing is that here, because we have a budget constraint line, okay, as you can see here, where it's tangent, let's call this point C. Okay, at point C, you can afford, okay, the bundle of point A and point B, because they're above the budget line, you cannot afford it, okay. You can only afford the bundle C here, okay. But if you could afford A, C, and B, you would pick any of them, okay. Yes, any questions?